14 years after the September 11 attacks that changed the world, it seems that intelligence failures are still very present in various military establishments, including some that concern the fight against jihadism in the Middle East. Shai Ben-ari has more.
It's a lesson that could have been learned already by now. The Daily Beast reports that a group of more than 50 intelligence analysts from the United States Central Command has issued a formal complaint that their reports on the Islamic State terror group and the al-Nusra Front, al-Qaeda's Syria affiliate, are being deliberately altered to project a narrative more in line with that of the Obama administration. The analysts contend their reports are being modified to display these terror groups as weaker than they really are, to fit in with the line that the U.S. is winning its war on terror.
As I watch the pieces of this come together, it seems to be unfolding in a manner which I think will be successful in Iraq.
And we are having the desired effects. And we're seeing evidence of this not only in our battle damage assessments, but more important, we're noting changes in the enemy's behavior and tactics that reflect his diminished capability and restricted freedom of movement.
Some of these altered reports made it all the way to the president's desk. Others that offered assessments of the situation on the ground deemed too negative were sent back or blocked from moving up the chain. A formal letter of complaint sent to the Pentagon's Inspector General even uses the word Stalinist to describe the tone being set by certain officials in the Defense Department. The complaint has now led to an investigation being opened by the Inspector General. The problem of manipulation and politicization of intelligence in the U.S. defense establishment is not new and has had serious repercussions in the past. In January of 2003, then-President George W. Bush presented a case against the regime of Saddam Hussein during his State of the Union speech to justify the invasion of Iraq later that year.
The British government has learned that Saddam Hussein recently sought significant quantities of uranium from Africa.
This claim, based on faulty intelligence, was included in Bush's speech despite the CIA's objections. He later admitted the intelligence failure in Iraq was the biggest regret of his presidency. Failures of intelligence also preceded the worst attack on American soil since World War II.
In June of 2001, the intelligence community issued a warning that a major al-Qaeda terrorist attack would take place in the next many weeks. We asked, could it take place in the United States? They said, we can't rule that out.
14 years after the 9/11 attacks, it is to be hoped that the dangers of ignoring information concerning security threats are now apparent to decision makers, as well as the dangers of picking and choosing intelligence reports according to political convenience. After all, some lessons of history are often repeated.
Yes, and with me right now here in the studio is military correspondent Shai Ben-ari. Good evening.
Good evening.
And I-24 News correspondent Dennis Weibel. Good evening. So I will start with you, Shai. You know, seeing your report, it seems that nobody took any lesson from what happened in the past, and it seems that the worst is yet to come.
Indeed. Well, you know, there are a lot of ironies here. One of the reasons given by the Bush administration for its invasion of Iraq back in 2003 were certain ties that existed supposedly between Saddam Hussein and al-Qaeda. Those did exist to a certain extent. They were never able to prove a connection between Saddam and 9/11. But there is an irony here because before the invasion, al-Qaeda was a very covert presence, barely on the radar, very minor. During the invasion itself, al-Qaeda was empowered, and after the invasion, today basically, al-Qaeda is now morphed into a totally different organization called the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant. It has all sorts of names. Most people see it as a much worse organization, more powerful, some would contend. It's somewhat ironic that that was the initial justification.
But you know what it says what all the analysts are actually saying all the time, that when there is, let's say, a black hole, everybody's getting in and just filling this hole, and even the types that you don't want exactly to be in your home.
Right, it's been mentioned many times before. We're talking about a certain vacuum, and other powers have basically rushed in to fill that vacuum. Basically, we're talking about a return back to basics. Basically, when you have this kind of instability and this kind of power vacuum, people turn to the most basic foundations that they have, and we're talking about the most initial form of radical Islam. Basically, the return of the caliphate is what these people want.
I would just before we will go just to Iran and to the latest reports about Iranian soldiers in Syria. I want to. How come it's not working?
Right.
Shai?
Well, basically, what we're talking about is a situation where the Islamic State still controls vast expanses of territory in Iraq and in Syria, and the reason for this is that there is no real willingness to put a major ground force on the ground. The current strategy, the Western strategy of using airstrikes as well as local forces on the ground, is basically what has led us to this point. No one has the capability to actually push IS out of the territory that it already exists and push them back. They haven't been advancing much recently, but there's a certain stalemate, you could say, at the moment.
So let's talk about the advance of Iran and not the IS.
Exactly. We're talking about reports emerging today that apparently there's a major Iranian force that has been pushed into Syria now and in the Zabadani area, which is near the Lebanese border. We're talking about an Iranian Revolutionary Guard force. Apparently this was arranged by Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Quds force, an elite Iranian force basically dedicated to overseas operations or beyond Iran's borders. This was apparently organized with Putin in a meeting in Moscow during July. The idea is to prop up the Assad regime as well as the Russian presence that was reported earlier this week.
Yeah, and we kind of anticipated that, didn't we?